Welcome to What CEOs Talk About. Do you wonder what CEOs talk about behind closed doors? How they bring their vision to reality? How do they overcome and succeed through adversity? We share that and so much more with each episode. Now, let's get started with the show.
Good day, everybody. My name is Martin Hunter. I am the host of What CEOs Talk About. Today, we have a guest from the East Coast of the U.S. Neil, thank you very, very much for being on the show.
My pleasure.
Neil, what is your official title? What do you do for a living?
My full name is Neil Krauter, just to say hello. And I work for a firm called Risk Strategies. It's about the 11th largest insurance broker in the United States. And prior to that, I ran my own firm for about 15 years. And my job at Risk Strategies, I'm on the executive committee, helping to run the firm. I also run all the various specialty practices. And the one that I started in and specialize in mostly is in the private equity and M&A world.
Fabulous. Thank you. Like all the guests, Neil, I let the guests pick and choose the title of the show. What is the title of today's show?
Do the opposite.
Oh, I am so curious. So before we go there, tell us your story, Neil. Who are you? Where do you come from? How, what makes you who you are? And walk us through your journey in life, and take us to where you are today in a few minutes.
I guess grew up was born in Manhattan and then grew up down in Rumson, New Jersey, and attended public schools there. It was a great place to grow up down in Rumson. My mom, my dad, one sister, and it was a nice, I'll call it middle class, slightly upper middle class, growing up experience. I am the first male Krauter to graduate college, 4 years of college.
Oh, wow.
So what made me what I am today? Always been a very competitive person.
Okay.
Here's something that most people don't know about me. When I was 7 or 8 years old, I was a Cub Scout.
Okay.
Cub Scouts back then, at least in our neck of the woods, you sold peanut brittle.
Peanut brittle? Oh,
peanut brittle, which was probably sponsored by some dentist association, because all it does is ever crack your teeth. But it was how the troops raised money.
Yes, of course.
And the first year, I won the sales contest, and then I was told that nobody in the country had sold more than I had.
Holy Moses!
The next year, I sold 10 times that amount, and the next year after that, they told me I was no longer eligible for the contest.
Because you're almost a professional salesperson.
Well, going to do the opposite. Now, you can imagine all of the Cub Scouts in town walking around with their boxes, going door to door to try and sell. Yeah. Well, I went 2 towns away to a town that didn't have Cub Scouts. I got to go to every house.
Planning the strategy, right? Plan the work the plan, do the opposite.
Do the opposite. So I've always been a competitive person from that regard. Love measurements, love statistics, and love being able to try and manage those and be on the top of the heap.
I have to tell this story. I'm down in Texas by the airport in Irvine, and there's this pho place. I love Vietnamese noodle soup. So I go in there, come on out, and I walk in a little strip mall. I walk out, and there's this kid selling chocolate bars and cookies in front of the liquor store right there. And he says, "Sir, would you like to buy a chocolate bar? He just got out of the restaurant." I was like, okay, the kid knows how to pitch. And so I was like, I said, "How much your chocolate bar?" He says, I can't remember. It's like $2 for a chocolate bar. And I said, "Oh man, sorry, man, I don't have cash." Well, lo and behold, he says, "I take credit and debit." He pulls out this square. I said, kid, how many you got, man? I don't care how many I'm going to eat. How many you got? Because you just showed me persistence and determination. I said, I'm going to pay you $20. You keep your chocolate bar. It's not good for me. Maybe I'll buy one for me, but I'll give you $20 because, man, oh man, you impressed the hell out of me, kid.
Now, the only thing that young man was doing wrong was he should have gone and sat outside the cannabis dispensary. I suspect he would have increased his sales.
Agreed. I don't know how his mom or his dad would have how they would have considered it if he came home smelling like pot or something like that. But man, oh man, that kid was good. So tell me, Neil, you've had time to think about, do the opposite. Why that title? Why is it so important for you? What's the important message behind it?
I think it really goes back to a couple of things, and the best probably example is, so I spent 10 years at Marsh & McLennan, and then I spent about 13 years at Aon, where I was vice chairman on the Worldwide Retail Board and vice chairman in New York. And when I finally, I left when I hit 40. Mm-hmm. When I was 18 years old, I said, I'm going to marry that girl. I'm going to retire at age 40, and I'm going to buy a wine store. So I married that girl. I retired at age 40. I did buy the wine store. And about 4 years after that, I got called back into the insurance brokerage business because Elliot Spitzer had gone through the brokerage community and found all sorts of misdoings. So the industry was just upside down.
Yes.
So, but yet I was going to be competing with the two largest brokers in the world, with just little old me and the people I started to hire. Well, the first thing I realized was you can't compete with them in the normal mode.
Yeah.
So it was, well, how do you compete with them? Just do the opposite of what they do. Do exactly the opposite of what they do. So their models were hire lots of junior staff.
Yeah.
Push the work down to the lowest paid employee, and then have layers of management on top of that to catch this problem. And then if this really blows up, it goes up to somebody else. And so I decided, well, wait a minute. What's the opposite of that? We're going to hire no junior staff. We're going to only hire people with more than 15 years of experience. But wait a minute, that's going to be costly for a new startup. But wait a minute, you know what? It wasn't. Because if you don't hire people that need to be supervised, you don't need to hire supervisors.
No, you don't need to have the leadership.
So now you're just paying the people that are doing the work. You can pay them more than they were making someplace else. They get rid of the annoyance of being babysat, which the employees didn't appreciate. So I did the opposite of their structure, and it worked out very, very, very well. And I sold that business almost 3 years ago.
And I love how you do that, because when people say, oh, do the opposite, when you're asking me that question, the first thing was like, okay, well, do the opposite, sell something different. No, the why and the what stayed the same. Why you're doing it, and for the insurance and the benefits and all that, the output is the same or similar, but it's the how you did it. It's really, that's what you meant, is how do you do it internally to be able to compete with them on the output? Because apples to apples, I mean,
they had all the horsepower to crush me if they wanted to. But I mean, all too often as we think about new businesses and we watch our clientele trying to differentiate themselves, if you're not really moving the needle, if you're not changing the paradigm, to use an overused MBA consultant expression, if you're not changing that, then you're an incremental add to the equation, and your results are probably going to be only incremental as well. If you want to have that quantum leap, if you want to go through the David and Goliath scenario and win, you better probably think about doing things dramatically differently than are being done now.
And I mean, that's the first thing, when we work with our clients and we optimize these PE firms portfolio in the companies, that's the first thing we ask. Like, ignite your curiosity. I love what you're saying, in being curious and not just saying, okay, let's put another burger. And there's nothing wrong in putting another burger on the menu, or a different place, or different. I mean, there's always room for more burgers. But if you, like you said, if you want to make a drastic change, you need to be curious on, like, a burger's a burger, how you make the burger and how you deliver the burger, I absolutely love it. Do it the opposite. That's amazing. That's really good. So what do you do currently in your current business that you think is industry leading in doing things the opposite?
It's a couple of other examples would be in the groups that I run. I don't let any departments or offices have their own P&L. Oh,
really?
And well, that's the opposite, right? Because
yeah.
Well, what happens when you have an office head or a department head focusing on a P&L? They focus on the P&L.
Yeah. They focus on the P&L. Hey, let's make sure that everything is whatever is spent according to the budget.
Well, other than maybe some expense optimization, that's not going to increase client satisfaction, client experience, or client value at all. Agreed. So I said long ago, I don't want you focusing on a P&L. I'll focus on the P&L. The CFO will focus on the P&L. You guys focus on clients. Don't worry how many pencils it took to get it done. If it's off, we'll figure it out at the end of the day. Go take care of your clients, get results. That's all you got to worry about. And if you're worrying about that, we're going to have a fantastically successful business.
It's so true. It is so true. I mean, we tell a different version of it where you can't get the financial results without having today day and age. You still need people we're not fully automated with AI and robotics. And so you need to really focus on the people, and that people includes both employees, staff, whatever you call, and clients. And you're 100%. That's word to the young and coming up. Neil, thank you. That's a good one. What else you got in your bag of tricks?
There's only one bonus pool for the whole company.
Keep going.
Well, if I said to you, if you ran the employee benefits group,
yes,
and I said, hey, I want you to work on this account, and it's got 10 people in it.
Yeah.
You're going to tell me it's too small for your department to make any money on it. And you're right. But wait a minute. The D&O side of the house, or some of the other sides of the house, are making fantastic amounts of money. Well, if you're worried about that P&L, then you're going to say, no, I can't do it. Yeah. Well, I've got only one bonus pool. So all it matters is, guys, you do what I ask you to do. You work on the accounts that come in the door. Don't worry about your bonus. Don't worry about your P&L. There'll be one P&L for the group. And hey, if the benefits group was marginally only successful and everybody else was really successful, it doesn't mean that you guys did a bad job in the benefits group. You may have been playing a supporting role that year. Doesn't mean your bonuses should be less. Just has to be looked at differently.
That is, so one of the things that we say all the time is, are you a transactional organization or a transformational organization? And what, Neil, you are truly a transformational leader and transformational by changing that and forcing them to do so, not giving them the choice, but forcing them to do so, to be transformational as well. That's
when you think about it, how many executives in a business enjoy managing people?
Truly enjoy managing people?
I mean,
very few, very, very few.
So I put myself in that category. So what I decided was, since I don't like it, and I bet you because I don't like it, I'm probably not the best at it. Well, then I'm not going to do it.
True.
So how do you not manage people? Well, one, as I said, you hire only people that don't need to be managed.
Correct.
The other thing we do is we have no org chart. There's no org chart because an org chart confers power on certain people who are above other people on an org chart.
Correct.
Not for us. Everybody's equal.
Okay.
We have a rule. So then what do you do about titles? We have a rule for titles. 1, pick one that your mom would be really happy and tell all of her friends you got.
I say the same thing.
Yeah. Make your mom happy. Number 2, if one person in the organization objects to you having that title, you can't have it.
Ooh, that's a good one. That's a really good one.
Titles are to be effective outside the organization.
Agreed,
They shouldn't.
yeah.
So we have no org chart. We don't have a title hierarchy because it just takes away, again, it puts up these false flags and false peaks, and it does nothing for taking care of clients and making them happier.
So how do you deal with functional accountability and process accountability? How do you deal with kind of everybody is nobody and all the time is never? How do you deal with that?
So we'll have people function as coordinators of a project.
Gotcha.
But it doesn't mean that they determine anybody's bonus or salary, because none of them know each other's bonus and salary.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a matter of putting together a team that respects each other.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're hiring just great people,
Mm-hmm.
they will respect each other. And if there's only one bonus pool, they have to function as a group to maximize that pool, or nobody makes more money. So God forbid they function for the greater good and taking care of that client and getting paid.
So what industry do you think that would be difficult to run that process? Like, I'm thinking, I don't know if manufacturing, because there's so many parts, that might be something that I would challenge the idea on.
Having never run a factory floor, I'm completely not qualified to do that. But I would suspect that would be an issue. I think also there's a reason that the Army has all the structure and titles and function.
Of course, yeah.
Because it's such a big organization, it has to have that. If you're going to be on the smaller side, if you're going to remain nimble, if you're going to be that, I've always tried to liken us to, I want to be the PT boat.
Yeah.
I don't want to be the aircraft carrier.
Yeah.
And by the way, by the time I go to the other side of the aircraft carrier and I can shoot at them, by the time they move their guns,
there's no
back
way.
on the other side again. So it works for organizations that are open-minded, nimble, and in an industry that has to change. So it probably certainly works better in a professional services organization or in certain hierarchies of a private equity portfolio company, not so much maybe the people on the factory floor.
Yeah, but I still think that there's a lot of opportunity for application, meaning that you don't have to create a hierarchy that is level over level over level over level. What you're saying is good, because although there might be some, I'll say, departmental leveling for the benefit of the skill set that needs to be matched, but understand that everybody in that unit is at the same level, right? It's a fair leveling place. So your methodology is applicable in spots in like a modular component, like Lego blocks. I think that's very insightful.
Well, I think like the group that you mentioned, okay, let's say that there's, 5 or 10 people in that group. A leader will naturally emerge.
Agreed. Yes.
And they will establish their own hierarchy, but it's not going to be based upon us telling them
Agreed.
who the boss is. They'll figure it out themselves. If they can't figure it out, they're going to fight about it. And eventually someone's going to have to get it figured out, because they're only going to make more money if the group succeeds, not as the individuals.
I totally agree with that. I think that's and again, that is so transformational instead of transactional. Don't tell them it's I worked and lived in Japan, and that Kaizen, Gemba Kaizen, which is the make the decision level as close to the ground as possible. That's a very applicable process, or very similar applicable process.
Well, I can't say it was born out of, any burst of intelligence. It was the fact that I didn't really want to manage that stuff.
By need. It's simply by need.
Well, yeah, because quite frankly, again, it took nothing away from growing the top line of the business or the share price of a business. Which is what I want to focus on. I don't want to focus on Betty versus Bob and how that works.
Yeah. So where else do you apply that methodology in your scheme of businesses? Like what do you do differently at Risk Strategies that you go, we're very business innovative in this specific area?
So Risk Strategies itself was born by a fellow named Mike Christian, who I've known for years and years, which is why I was happy to sell my business to him. It's actually backed by Kelso and Company, private equity firm, and Goldman Sachs. But they took themselves and built businesses and bought businesses that were all focused around specialty practices.
Oh, gotcha.
So if they couldn't be number 1, 2, or 3 in an industry segment, then they wouldn't do it.
Gotcha.
So that was a big part of why I was attracted to sell my business to them. But I think it goes to a certain confidence level. And once you have some success at this, it's all too often that everybody chases business and they work on opportunities that have very little chance of success. And again, because we're focused on a unified bonus pool, if somebody brings in an opportunity and we all look at it and go, it's a 1 in 20 shot. Well, if you're just a producer and you get paid for what you kill, you want the group to work on it.
Yeah.
Well, if the group gets bonused on success, we have to say no.
Yeah.
So I think a little bit of that same thinking goes into, we're not going to work on things that are, at least in the groups that I run, we don't respond to RFPs. So I'll give you my thinking on RFPs.
Oh, I've got opinions too. Let me hear yours.
So, when people invite us to an RFP, I get back on the phone. I say, okay, I want to make sure how I understand this is going to work. And they're like, okay, well, the current fee is $500,000. Obviously, we're expecting people to cut that to win the business. I was like, okay. And you want us to go through and give you all our ideas and all our intellectual capital. I said, okay, well, how much are you paying us if we lose? And they sort of,
what?
Yeah, what? Well, nothing. Oh, okay. I just want to make sure I understand. So we're going to give you all of our intellectual capital, all of our ideas, work on this for several weeks. And if you just stay with the guy you like now, and just because he cuts the fee from 500 to 300, we don't make any money. There, yeah. Well, no. No. And by the way, anybody that's saying yes to you, by definition, you shouldn't want, because they're idiots. Either you're a professional services firm, hey, wait, if you asked, an accountant, hey, could you come in and take a look at my last 5 years tax returns? And you know what? If you change the results a lot and I like it, maybe I'll hire you. No, they're not going to do that. And if you could get somebody to do that, it would be somebody that's
he's an idiot.
that they're an idiot, and you don't want them doing your taxes. So no, we do the opposite there as well.
Oh, I am a big anti-RFP. Having spent many years in the military, I understand the process. And every time my team goes, oh yeah, no. Even for our clients, no. The energy and money that you're going to lose, time, energy, and resources to complete this RFP is just absolutely, and you're just, and like you said, let me beg for money. That's how I see it. And it's like, great. I mean, thank you for considering us as your top provider, but you want us to beg basically for money and ask if we can cut down as much as we can to give you something that is so tight that we're not going to give you the best service that we can. So I was like, no, thanks.
It basically tells you how that customer thinks about the industry and your professionalism. Agreed. And that's just something that, again, we'll take the opposite side of that and say, no, thank you.
Where has there been pitfalls in your journey in the years that you've applied? Do the opposite. Where have you struggled and said, oh, maybe that didn't work so much in this area or this specific?
Well, thank God, nothing's coming straight to my head.
That's good. Yeah, that's a good thing.
But I'm sure there have been. It's an approach. Okay, I'll give an example. There's a consulting firm that I've known these people for decades. In fact, the head of it is my kid's godfather.
Okay.
And when we came back and said we wouldn't do RFPs, they never sent us another piece of business again.
Ever. Yeah.
And would I have liked some of their business? I would have, but magically, we grew 30, 40% a year without their business. I would have loved to have had it. And I liked dealing with that firm. They're very professional. They're great. They're a lot of fun to be with. But yeah, that may have backfired on us, but magically, you don't need to have a GoFundMe page or a bake sale for us.
How about disputes? How about, I'll call them HR issues, where if everybody's too much alike or too aligned, have you had situations where somebody was more transactional and transformational? And I'm not going to answer. I'm going to put some assumptions, but I want to hear if you've faced that before.
So the first office space that my firm took was in the Fox News building in Rock Center in New York.
Oh my!
We leased half the 29th floor. We had no employees. We had no clients, and it was just my capital. So it was a pretty big gamble.
Yeah.
But oddly enough, there was a door and a closet. I guess it was a closet.
Okay.
But when you opened that door, there was a rod, where you could hang up a jacket.
Okay.
However, the depth of the closet was only this,
which is about 6 inches, from what I can see.
So basically, you couldn't hang up anything in there. So, and it wasn't really big enough to do anything. So we had no idea how this came about since we didn't design the space. And we eventually came up with a great use of that space. When we put HR department on a sign and put it on the door. And so if somebody had an issue, we would just say, you know what, you're right.
Go to
HR, stay at HR until you get it figured out, and then come back. So
I can just imagine the face of the individual opening the door. Huh?
Well, look, it's okay if people don't want to work at a firm, right? Everybody should go do what makes them happy, makes them productive, where they get some value out of what they're doing for 10 hours a day besides, a paycheck. And if someone doesn't like the scenario or who they're working for, if you don't like who you're working for, come and tell me. Come and tell somebody else. Maybe it makes sense to make an adjustment. But sometimes I think HR problems come up because they can.
Because HR is there.
And if they know that we're not going to listen to it, it's amazing how many problems never actually get to you.
So tell us a little bit more. I want to know a little bit more of the growing pains, because I'm sure it's not been all rosy. There's great successes, but I'm sure there's been some tribulations in your path and how you've dealt with it. So,
the early days of building the business, it was, there were some days that were awfully dark. I thought we were doing pretty well at one point, and that maybe we'd gotten to the point where we were sort of cash flow even. And my CFO came in and said, I need $1 million. This is on a Wednesday. He goes, I need $1.5 million by Friday, or we can't meet rent and payroll. I was like, okay, well, the only way it's coming is if I find $1.5 million of my money or somebody else's money that I can get.
Yeah.
That was a pretty dark 2 days. We made it work. It got done.
I'd have a chat with the CFO. How come you're telling me on Wednesday when it's due for Friday?
Yeah, we had some long words. I recall the conversation
quite vividly.
And it started with a full bottle of scotch on the desk, and it was definitely below half by the time the meeting was over. But I think in the early days, it's people that disappoint you.
Oh yeah.
Whether it's somebody that said that they were going to bring you an account, or someone that said they'd come to work for you and then didn't, or they came and they left. It was those personal disappointments that probably hit the hardest.
Mm-hmm.
If you lose an account, you lose an account, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it was always the individuals that you were kind of counting on and trusting.
Mm-hmm.
And those were the ones that would set you back on and, kind of put you into a black hole for a couple of days. But then, you get a couple of wins. I know that I reflect probably more on my losses and my wins in life.
Yeah.
But that only makes you a better person if you really figure it out. If it makes you double down and work harder, that loss is actually a win in some regards.
What do you think? I truly appreciate ensuring that the core values of the company meet the objective that we want to achieve. And if you're going to do things where you do things differently, do the opposite, it needs a special set of values that you see through every member, especially if you've got no official leadership. They have to be self-managed, self-leadership. So what kind of core values do you think, values, behaviors, skill set that you think are critical to deliver on your paradigm of do things the opposite?
I think a lot of that has to come from the top. Mm-hmm. And, people who've worked with me for all these years, I don't care what you do in your own bedroom. Mm-hmm. I don't care what God you look to or pray to. I don't care about most of those things. I really, really don't.
Mm-hmm. And you're not a people manager. You don't care. Well, not I don't care. I know what you're saying. I agree.
Yeah, it's just, I want the best employee. I don't care if they're in some fringe part of the population. I don't care. And because I've let everyone know that, it's not a topic of conversation.
Yeah.
It's not something that's going to be tolerated, and bias and prejudice, it just can't exist, right?
Agreed.
All that matters is somebody is knocking the cover off the ball, and it doesn't matter what color skin they have. It doesn't matter what they do in their own privacy of their own rooms. We did used to joke that we had drug testing, and if you passed drug testing, we didn't hire you. But that was only a joke. We didn't do the drug testing. So look, values are pretty important, but they can be, I think, over skewed too. And if a leader has too much of their values being imparted into the organization, I don't know, as you grow, how that is going to give you a big enough population of people and enough countercultural thinking to get you there. I've always told my people, if you want to fight with me, come on in, close the door. You can say whatever you want. It's going to be quick. It's not going to be a long conversation, but you can say whatever you want. Now, in a group environment, no, but you have to create a forum for communication. You have to create the leadership that values are important, but your own personal values relative to the group, quite frankly, it doesn't matter. I don't even want to hear.
Oh yeah, absolutely. For me, when I think of values, is to say, what is the code of conduct that is associated for us? For example, our first as on-demand fractional executive that serves private equity and optimizing, we need to get shit done. People rely on us to get shit done, right? We're not consultants. We're not anti-consultant either, but we're not consultants. We go in as fractional executives. We come into sales, strategy officer, COO, CEO, sometimes CFO as well, but we're expected to get shit done. The second win that we say all the time is you need to be a servant leader. You need to come in and say, how can I help? And that for us is, a value that none of our partners will ever let go. And the third one that we have is be well-grounded, because when organizations come to us, they're looking for that oak tree. They're looking for people because they've got either explosive growth, they've got a turnaround, they've got a merger and acquisition, and everything's kind of havoc and explosive and chaotic. So they're always looking at somebody who's grounded. So when I think of those, and then we act on data as fourth, and learning and innovation, be always curious is the fifth one. So I'm trying to think of really good, a code of conduct that when you say, because I really like it, do the opposite. It's so short, but yet so powerful in the presentations and the examples that you've given us. So I'm just thinking about somebody who's listening and go, okay, how does that look like in my workforce or in my special force team? What does it look like, right?
I think that the first thing to embrace sort of the do the opposite, mentality is you have to stop and think, right?
True.
Because if your natural reaction is going to be to go do it this way, if you're going to do the opposite, well, wait a minute. Okay, first of all, what is the opposite of that?
Yeah. How
does that actually work? And God forbid, you're starting to think about an alternative way of looking at things. So it takes a little while to get used to, but there's a lot of good opposites. I'll give you one of my new ones. I won't accept a Zoom call booked for a half an hour.
Okay.
15 minutes.
True.
You want to double the amount of free time? You want to double your amount of time? Only take 15-minute Zoom calls. And I'll tell you what, 75% of them are still being done. Everything's being said in 15 minutes. If you book it for half an hour, it's a half an hour.
I agree.
There, do the opposite. Do half of the amount of time.
You know what I've been pushing on my team and everybody else and some of my clients is like, before the smartphone was a smartphone, it was a phone. And
pick it up, use it.
And it amazes me. My daughter will text me and she'll say, "Hey Dad, what's up? Hey, what's up? Hey, listen." And then my big fat thumbs can't type as fast as she can. So I call her and she doesn't answer. I'm like, "Hey, hold on a second. You're on your phone, right?" "Yes." "Answer the friggin' phone." "I want to talk to you." And there's just this, and I find that being able to walk and talk for me, I go in my backyard. We have a pretty big property. I like to talk and walk at the same time. I'm more creative. I feel that those are like, do the opposite. Just because everybody else is on Zoom doesn't mean that you have to be on Zoom, 18 hours a day. Because I did that in the beginning of the pandemic, and oh my goodness, you're probably in the same position.
I think you've probably had more experience with do the opposite than you may realize. Because if you've got a teenage daughter, they're doing the opposite.
That is so true. That is so true. Sorry. So tell us a little bit more about the transition, because I think a lot of people who listen to this, there's a lot of opportunity. People have said, "No, I sold my company. I bought I did this, did that." Can you talk to us about the emotional state, what you went through? And you talked kind of rapidly through it, but can you walk us through a little bit more of what kind of happened when you sold your company?
Sure. The prices had gotten to a point that I thought the industry was probably at a peak. I was wrong. They've continued to go up. Mm-hmm. But I also looked at my business and, in the professional services world, going up against, literally Marsh and Aon, the two Titans. Big brokers. Yeah. Technology was going to move faster than I probably could have moved.
Okay.
And I could have gotten there, but the technology in our industry, the failure rate has been like 80%. I mean, lots of try it, write it off, try it again. And when you're dealing with your own balance sheet, it's, that's problematic. But just given what my view of where the cyber world was going and the amount of money that needed to be spent on cyber protections and technology, because the insurance market is the least efficient capital market left on the face of the earth. It's terribly inefficient. So it's ripe for a lot of financial engineering, a lot of technology solutions.
Overhauling, yeah.
I mean, just how the process,
archaic.
If you saw how the sausage was made, you wouldn't eat it. You'd be even more appalled with insurance than you are now. So a big part of it for me was, I said, I would probably have to spend in the next 5 years, 2 to 3 years profit on technology. And I thought, you know what, if I sell the business, I'm going to get top dollar, what I thought was top dollar. So that was a big part of my thinking.
So what triggered, because oftentimes you can associate a decision to a trigger, a large event to a situation. What made you think about, hold on a second, technology is a big thing. Was it that you were good in your shoes? You were looking at projections, you're having wine with somebody. What kind of triggered that whole kind of thought process?
I think it was just more of a view of the future. And
okay, gotcha.
And it's certainly, again, maybe just a little bit of good luck there, but it certainly has been 100% correct, and probably even more so than I was thinking, 3-4 years ago. But the other triggering events were private equity firms and private equity backed insurance broker roll-ups. The phone kept on ringing, and when I started to actually think about it and do the math, because I used to run a business where I was more concerned about, well, how much cash is it throwing off?
Yeah.
Then you start looking at, okay, let's actually really look at EBITDA. Oh, wow, that's a pretty good number. And wait, multiply it by this?
By how much?
Whoa. Man, did I do that wrong? Is there one too many zeros on this? So, and then, once you sort of, start looking around, you're in play, the world, they're just going to keep coming. But I was just lucky to find, a great partner in Mike Christian and Risk Strategies and Kelso. So it's worked out really, really well.
What was your biggest fear before you kind of signed the dotted line and gone through? Had you sold businesses before? Or was this the first time you sold business? It's
the first business of size I'd ever sold before. My biggest concern, because, when I started the business, the people that sort of came in early, I said, look, if you want to throw money in, then we'll give up some ownership.
Yeah.
Well, this was back in 2004. The financial markets were in trouble.
Oh, yeah.
The insurance market was in big trouble. Nobody wanted to put money in. They wanted money back out.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, we owned 100% of the business.
Oh, wow.
So
when you say we,
well, when I started the business, I put it into my two kids' trusts. I formed trusts for them. So I effectively did wealth transfer.
Yeah.
So it was zero basis when the business was started. So it was just a smart.
Yeah.
Smart
yeah. That was very, very smart.
So the family, so I'll just say, owned 100% of the business. So my biggest concern was the employees, because on the sale, they weren't getting anything.
They weren't part of the deal. Yeah.
So we did work. Risk Strategies was very generous. We worked out a bunch of options to give them. But then I did something, again, probably more than opposite. This might even, go 3/4 of the way around. So it's typical in our business. You sell the business, and then 3 years later, you get an earnout.
Okay.
So if you grow the business from the revenue you sold it at, they pay you again.
Not a bad deal.
If you grow the business, it's a great deal.
Yeah.
So I gave half the earnout to the employees.
That's kind of you.
And so so my biggest fear was, look, one, I don't want to lose people that made us this money, right?
Yeah, agreed. Yeah.
At the same time, they didn't put money at risk.
So,
okay, I could see a lot of sides of the argument, but by giving them half the ownership of the earnout, they stuck around. They're sticking around. We've had very few people leave. That's been a great retention tool, and the earnout is going to be wildly
very sizable. If
it'll be the largest in the history of the firm.
Oh wow!
So I feel good about the fact that we're going to, some people are going to get checks the size of that they've never seen before.
The check the size of a house plus.
I hope several mortgages are going to get paid off. Let's put it that way. So that was my fear, and that drove this as a solution.
Oh, good. What are you afraid of now?
Next steps after the earnout.
Oh, that's a big one, man.
Because that was a big carrot.
Yeah.
Right. It was something to run to.
Yeah.
And if you've done any mountain climbing in your life, and I'm fortunate that I have, 40 pounds ago and several years ago, but when you get to the top, well, then what?
Yeah.
Well, first of all, in mountain climbing, you have to go down, which is another issue. But it's kind of right now is what's next.
Yeah.
It's not a money motivator anymore.
Of course. Yeah.
I've taken care of the people. So it's a big question in my mind. What's the next step that's going to get me out of bed? With, a lot of vigor and competitiveness, or is it time to switch to do something else? Do you want, is it? This is a natural opportunity to sit back and make some decisions, and having flexibility in your own decisions.
Oh, that's huge.
It's actually scary.
It is.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Do the opposite. Okay. Do the opposite. Okay. Do the opposite. The opposite of what? Right? Retire or not to retire, right?
Well, the opposite is, I could stick around and make, by industry standards, a great deal of money. But maybe the opposite is to go spend that money someplace else or do something different. I don't know. Yeah.
That's it. The next step in a lot of people's lives is always, especially I think as we get older, we get more fine-tuned in our life experience, and we know what we like and what we don't like. And it's hard to say, well, I've done a lot in my life, so what is next? Like, how do I think the word that I appreciate that you use was vigor. How do I vigorously get into something, right? And so that
in this day and age, you can't be half-hearted and be a success.
Agreed.
And so it's, if you go in hard, the old expression, if you go in hard, you won't get hurt.
Yeah.
If you lob your way in there, you're not going to enjoy it. So if you can't give 110%, get out of the game and give somebody else a chance, and maybe coach them on how they can be doing it.
Absolutely. What piece of reference do you like? So if I asked you what piece of document, either a book, a movie, a person that you say, you know what, I've always referred back to this one book or one or a couple of books, or this one piece of information, or this person that I spoke to a long years ago that said, hey, listen, this, what would that be for people who are listening?
That's a tough one. I don't think that there's been any, epiphany book that is kind of changed my outlook. I actually don't think there is one. Other than there's a gentleman by the name of Martin Dubilier. Martin created Clayton and Dubilier, one of the largest private equity firms, in the world. And I dealt a lot with Martin early on, and he just had a very no nonsense way about him. And he challenged everything. It didn't matter what it was. He wanted to tear it apart, challenge it, and rebuild it again. Mm-hmm. So his way of thinking probably was one of the bigger influences on my life. And the other one was a friend's dad. When I mentioned before that I had when I was a teenager, it was, I'm going to marry that girl. I'm going to retire at age 40. Well, that was because I watched all the other dads getting on the train at 6:30 or 7 in the morning, coming home at 7 o'clock at night, dog tired. Well, then there was this guy named Bruce Coe, and Bruce had retired, and he was playing tennis, then going for a swim at the beach club, and then having lunch. And boy, and at 5 o'clock, he was having a nice bottle of white Burgundy. And I was like, well, I kind of like what he's doing. So believe it or not, when I came up with the concept of retiring at 40, well, if you want to retire at age 40, you have to run your life from the time you're 18 to the time you're 40 in a way that allows that to happen.
Agreed.
And it framed a sense of urgency. It framed a time frame. It meant, okay, it was important to get out of college in less than 4 years because that was an extra year of earning. Yeah. So I really think that observation that night that came out sitting around talking to, my buddy Jeff Coe's dad, Bruce, around a keg of beer on a Friday night, that probably had more influence on my life, that and Martin Dubilier.
Oh, wow. Wow. Thank you for that. Who do you consider, if you were to pick somebody, who do you consider would be, I don't want to say a competitor, but a rival, and pick somebody you go, this person, this company, they do things a little bit better than us. And that's somebody that I'd like to get in the ring with.
Well, fortunately, I get plenty of chance in the ring with all of them. I'd say each of them does it slightly better or worse, and everybody has their own nuances. There's a firm called Lockton, and they family owned. They're in the top. I think they're number 7 in the country, but they've instilled a regionalization sense of ownership and a reward system that I think that they do really, really well on. What I don't like about it is it rewards the top guys at the expense of the bottom, because the top guys take home and divide up what's left at the end of the year. So if I pay you $10,000 less, there's 10,000 more in the pot for us. Never been a big fan of that as an approach. I would probably say Locked In because it's the Aons and the Marshes and the Willises of the world are just too big to be. They don't care, and they're they do things their way, and they're easy to beat. The folks at Locked In, I think, are still creative. They're still hungry, and they're mostly producer-led, so they're pretty creative.
Okay,
they're worthy competitors.
One of the last questions: what do you tell 20-year-old Neil now? What piece of advice would you give yourself at the age of 20?
Well, the first thing I told both my boys while they were in college was there were some simple rules. Don't get arrested, don't get a girl pregnant, and don't get married. And there was one other rule. You better learn how to do Excel spreadsheets like like nobody's business. After that, whatever you learned in college.
Oh, that is a wonderful piece of advice. I concur with that 100%. Well, by the age I was 20, I had been arrested once. I was almost married, and I was almost a father, so I wouldn't have been again. The one for me,
well, I hate to say it, but in that example, you did the opposite, but that wasn't the right thing.
It's funny. I shouldn't say it's funny. When I left the Army after 10 years of service, my sergeant major told me, he says, "Hey, Hunter, remember three things." And I said, till then, this stuck with me. And he said, in a very old school Army, he says, one, physical and mental health. That's number one. Always abide by that. Number two, family and friends. Always your unit first. Always your unit. And he says, number three, every fucking thing else after. Yeah. Now, so after you, I think I would put a fourth in this day and age is like spreadsheets. I've mastered spreadsheets, and I absolutely gauge somebody's professional competency by their ability to either create, manage, or operate a spreadsheet. I'm 100% with you. 100% with you. All right. Last question, Neil. Today, tomorrow, the day after, what are you working on now? What's the thing that you go, hey, listen, this is something that I don't do necessarily as good as I should. Here's what I'm working on.
So I can tell you that probably my biggest shortcoming that I'm dealing with now is trying to, so I have the options to do different things within our own organization and take on more higher level stuff. I've done a relatively piss poor job of succession planning. And that's what I'm struggling with now. And it's been a project I've been working on for almost 6 months. And I've currently come to the realization, instead of trying to replace me, I think the most effective methodology is going to be to break myself into 3 components, maybe 4, haven't decided. Mm-hmm. It's really going to take 3 or 4 people to come on and break those functions into smaller components so that they can scale that up to double the size of the business. It can't be done the way I've done it in the past. So working on the succession planning and trying to build out a new organization that will take this to the, for the next 10 or 15 years, and leave that as, if I want to continue to run it, great. If I want to have that be part of the legacy, great. But that's the biggest thing that I'm working on. It's been tough. It's been a real challenge, but something I should have dealt with a long time ago.
We just hired a new partner, and this kid is amazing. And I see him being the next managing partner because he does things differently than I do. And that for me was a key thing. I started doing it, and the way he was approaching sales and the way that he was approaching operations and economics. And I'm like, this kid is sharp. And lo and behold, he sat with me on a few large projects, and he just stayed quiet. And just his respect for listening and paying attention and really analyzing and taking everything in consideration. I was like, wow, this kid is a managing partner in the making. Absolutely. And so I hear you because letting go I've owned and operated my business since 2009. So I know that at a certain point I have to start letting go, because I don't want to be stuck like you in a position where it's like too late now. Yeah. Like, oh my goodness. Right. And so, I hear you, Neil. I hear you. Fabulous. Thank you. I could go on and on, but my marketing team always says, make sure you keep it within an hour, because then.
Well, I'm going to leave you with one of my favorite sayings.
Please.
Only an idiot argues with an idiot.
Well said. Can I steal that? Can I steal it?
Sure. I'll take the royalties.
I'll give you 1%. That's for sure. With that being said, Neil, thank you so very much. Are you okay if we put your contact details below, risk strategies and all that good stuff? I'm sure that there's fabulous.
Thank you I really enjoyed this. It was a lot of fun.
Fabulous. Thank you very much, Neil, for being on the show. You'll have all the details in the narrative below. And for everybody, thank you very much for listening. Thank you, Neil, again, for being on the show. It was very entertaining. I think I had like 1,000 more questions. So maybe there's a session 2 in the coming 2022 year. So appreciate it. Thank you.
I look forward to the sequel.
Fabulous. Thank you. With that being said, my name is Martin Hunter. I'm the host of What CEOs Talk About, where we translate strategy into frontline operations. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to What CEOs Talk About. Make sure to click subscribe to get notified about future episodes, or check us out at www.whatceostalkabout.com.